Greetings, everybody. I know it's getting late. I want to segue from language to maps because in my mind, mapping is one way that we can really communicate with everyone. Everyone looks at a map and they bring something to it, right? It's like Plato in the cave. And what we've found is that, my experience, I started out as sort of a tree-hugging archaeologist, got into technology, started a GIS company, and finally finished a PhD in archaeology again. And all these things sort of come full circle. Michael was the one of the TAs on my field school in 1987. And it's such an honor for me to come back and to talk to you all, but also to join in on this project. And it's one of the wonderful things because, for years what we've done and what I've been able to do is to leverage geography in a way that helps to solve problems, whether it's routing a pipeline or whether it's getting stakeholders to get together and come up with scenarios. And there are a lot of discussions around scenarios and tools and things in this meeting, and maps show up. But in any case, Puente Institute is a nonprofit I'm on the board of, and we sort of fill this gap between researchers and scientists that are doing really good work that just have some hurdles to get over and potentially so that they can get on with the real business of what they're trying to do. And in the same way, we can get directly in touch and build tools and things that actually indigenous people, local people can use, and they don't have to have a degree, they don't have to understand how the technology works, right? So a lot of these things have changed. We've kind of come to this web pattern. Everyone has a phone, even folks in the village, right? So in any case, we've done some projects with a bunch of different nonprofits here and there, and this is one of the first things that I did when I got involved with this project this summer was to work with some of Michael's students and dig through some of the old archives, pull together all these old files that lived on different shared drives and things, reconcile what was the best, most spatially accurate, and not just make maps, but put it into a web portal that's secure that lots of people can access if they have the right credentials, right? And it's not something intended just for researchers. This is the same tool that a fukaka can use in the village or on his phone in order to be able to talk about a place, look at a place, or communicate about some of these patterns that we're seeing in the forest. So, here's an example of just zooming in on this web map, which will also work on your phone, like I said, when you're not connected, if things are prepared right. And we're looking at the modern village here where a fukaka lives, and one of these ancestral villages to the west with these causeways and things. And you've probably seen these things in figures, but these are living, breathing features that have information that we can replace and update and improve, right? We can ask questions, we can say what's near, what's within, and it's not like some geek like me in the back room doing a bunch of analysis and then producing a figure, right? This is about putting analytic tools in a web browser to allow a variety of people to actually interact with it, contribute to it, ask questions about it, right? So it's really powerful stuff. So simple tools like buffering and view sheds and watersheds, all these things you hear about and see in the colored glossies, you as or maybe some of you are very tech savvy, but you don't need a degree in geography to be able to use this stuff. You're like, well, what do I want to do? I want to look at the proximity of some of these banded forests to existing villages and compare that to the proximity of these banded forests to ancestral villages, right? So I could ask that question myself in this web browser, come up with some preliminary results, and then have some tools and things to talk about with other researchers. I can create new content and all that. So everyone gets that. So keep your eye on the circle. So here we are. This is a modern aerial photo, and Michael showed some satellite imagery that showed the banding really prominently. Well, there's obviously, remote sensing's been around a long time. It's a bit like, they wrote the Bible in Latin so other people couldn't understand it, right? Well, now we can get at remote sensing in a web browser too, so you don't even have to know what that is, but you could be like, I see something interesting. So I'm going to turn on another layer, and I'm going to use a swipe tool, which I can actually show dynamically. That is actually, this is not some magical thing. This is real. You could look at this. This is a circular pattern isolated from everything else with these bands showing up really prominently. And we're talking about differences in time. This is a multispectral image. It's got a bunch of bands and it's been rendered in such a way that shows wetness versus dryness and other things in vegetative vigor. But all those things are, you don't need to know those details. You can hit the little widget and say, I want to look at vegetative vigor. And then I can browse. So probably tough to see in the back of the room. There's some really intricate patterns in some of these. A lot of people said, well, is it fluvial? Is it due to soil differences? And all these things we still have yet to answer. But what I can tell you is that you have these zigzagging, reversing patterns, feathered patterns. This is not nature in any sense that we've ever seen. And so by having access to this and being able to send out the local folks into the forest to conduct surveys, take pictures, talk about it, come back and then overlay that, right? Do the soil surveys. I mean, a lot of work is set up to do really rigorous studies, but here we are out of the box able to sort of start looking at this and having light bulbs go off in these indigenous folks' heads around. They're like, wow, and where is that? And then they see the lake and then they're like, oh my God, it's just right up there by so-and-so's house, So it's pretty cool. This is another free app that you all can hit. It's called Landsat Explorer. And you can go anywhere in the world or anywhere in the Amazon, and you can pick a time profile and turn on some of these things. So these charts are actually looking at the images available over time from 1992 on up to today. And you don't always have an image of what the exact period you want, but you can sometimes pick summer versus spring, so you can look at dry versus wet years. And I can just click on one of these little icons here at a certain, pulse, and boom, that image pops up, right? Or I can swipe and compare. So really simple tools designed for people like you who are focused on research and not on technology and for the sake of technology. Here's an example where it's the same. I'm just toggling that image, and you can see some change there. It's quite prevalent when you actually are looking at it with a really good screen. Same thing, here's the time slider bar that I have turned on. So if you want to just sort of slide over them, this little red dot is where I started. Here's this band, and I can pull this across and start comparing before and after, turn on different layers, look at soils, look at vegetation, right? So self-service mapping for everyone. These orange outlines are actually where we digitized observable banded forest patterns. And there are, I forget the exact number, but I believe it's 1.2 million acres, sorry not to use hectares, that are modified in this basin. And when you go far afield from the actual basin, the patterning doesn't show up. It really seems to be restricted to the upper Jingu and some of these things. Maybe, hopefully I'm not giving away the farm. Don't publish anything I'm saying. In any case, here's another example on the left, or on the left there, the color. That's a mobile phone. That's that same data already downloaded to a phone. I can add information. It shows where I am. So it's, Google Maps for your own research, right? So I can zoom in and not repeat the collection of the same information. And that's really valuable because you get out there and you're sweating, you got 2 machetes, and everyone's telling you about the 15 different snakes that are going to kill you. And, I'm here looking at my phone and to tell us where we want to go, right? But I don't need to be there to allow these people to do this, right? So Michael can be here working, communicating with these guys. They can do a whole bunch of work, do some transects, collect some information, and we can do research without the thousands it takes to get down there in the short term, build better research plans and what have you, and then roll it out, and basically take this up a notch where we can train people to be able to not only use these tools, but actually to author them and to create new content, to think about the different kinds of maps they want to do, things with language, things with immersive multimedia. On the right is another app, and all this stuff is tied. It's not just like apps on the App Store. This is an integrated platform. This university has it. It's called ArcGIS, and I'm not trying to sell anything, but what I'm telling you is that this system has really progressed over 40 years. And it came out of Harvard. These guys built this really robust tool set. And other people out there's lots of open source stuff, and this is also can be open as well. But it's a seamless process for people that don't understand technology, right? So I can author a map, I can pull together some content, and then other people start collecting it for me, and then I can come back to the web browser and do analytics, whatever I want, and it's pretty powerful. And on that one example, you can have a survey form where, features of interest or whatever it is, you're out there, boom, pick something, what is it? It's a feature, describe it. Turn on the record button and have, the elder tell you what it is, right? Shows up on the map, it's a pin, and I never had an internet connection or anything. And then I go back and I'll show you in the web map how I can access all this. So this same framework, it's called Survey123. It's one of these, built-in apps that's native, interfaces with all the other web maps I showed you. This one's in Spanish, really easy to just switch the language on the fly, so you could have it in Kuikuro for that matter. And it's nice because it walks you through a process that people are used to. So you might know that when I get to a certain question, if I hit yes, I want some more information. If I don't show me that question, right? Because people hate surveys and what have you. So you want to streamline the data collection process so it's not like, oh God, how am I going to get this back on the computer again, right? You have all these people that collected data for a whole field season and you never see it. It doesn't happen anymore. You don't have to do that. You can also make these things super intuitive. On the left is, where I can have little pictures of the species you're interested in. You're doing a biologic survey, a bird survey. I can click on the little speaker, hear what that bird sounds like. If I see a bird or hear one that I have never heard before, I can just record it right there. And then I go and talk to somebody about it, right? So all of this, again, it's this, I just author, and on the right, this is the programming. You guys heard of Excel? It's super easy. So I'm like, on the top one, okay, first field is select from a list of birds. And then I have down below is a table that's the list of birds, right? So you guys could build this form in about 10 minutes if I sat there and showed you. And I can do this in my bad Spanglish, Portuguese, what have you, with some of the local folks, and they'll be making these forms, okay? So that's really I'm not saying it's just an easy button, I'm just saying that there's no excuse for not using technology to collect better data and to be able to use it and have people you're working with actually be engaged. The last thing I want to talk about is deep analytics in a web browser. So many of you have probably heard about suitability analysis. We often see the end product. You see a heat map, and it's like, this is good, this is bad. Let's look at change over time. All we're really doing is we're taking different layers of information and we're dumbing them down into, let's call it a heat map, where green is good and red is bad, okay? And maybe we're interested in suitability, the best place to do something, or cost, or the worst, right? So constraints, opportunities and constraints. Some of you probably, Ian McCard, landscape design. A lot of these things came out of landscape design and things, but we can now do this in a web browser too. So you might say, hey, all right, one of the criteria I'm interested in is slope. Now, it's probably a bad example for the Amazon because it's pretty darn flat. But in any case, most can get it in Brazil. Okay, thank you. There you go. So the parts that I've been in, let's say. But anyway, on the fly, I might say, what's steep and what's not? Let's just make 5 classes. I take this layer that was slope, was elevation at first. I dumb it down into a new map that's just got values of like 1 to 5. Steep is bad, flat is easy, right? Maybe it's for a new walkway to get to the stream or whatever. In any case, this is just one layer that's in that stack, okay, on the left. And these stacks can get all combined so that we can combine and compare apples to oranges. And the way this works is, let's just say I'm just jumping on, I'm grabbing 2 layers, slope stability, suitability, and distance to roads, okay? Oops. And what it does is, the first layer I had, scores red is bad, high numbers are bad, or difficult for whatever the criteria was, and green is easier. Well, what I can do is I can make one map out of those 2 layers, so I don't have to look at those other 2 layers. You know what it's like turning on 1,000,000 layers on a map, right? What we want to do is make decision-making maps in a way that we can still get back at how they were created. We can play around with how important a certain layer is. For example, here in the bottom, I made a new map and I got an 11 because I wanted to say that slope was twice as important as the other variable. So I just they're just numbers. So I'm just taking these arrays of numbers, stacking them up, making a new map. Now, I didn't mean to lose some of you on this idea, but it's extremely powerful because when you're talking about scenario building, what we want is not just to be able to turn on a ton of layers like here are the roads and here are the people. We want to sort of think about those derived things where we can start to look at a whole bunch of factors at once, simplify them into really meaningful overlays, right, that allow people to make decisions without having to understand how to make it all, okay? And so these days, and you can't really see it's all washed out, but there are these little widgets where there's global data sets now, such as, you know, biodiversity, distance to water, you know, there's a number of them here. And in this widget, you know, I can go and get some really coarse level variables, make these heat maps myself, and then say, now let's look at it where we assume the temperature increase of 2 degrees or something. Run that again. Well, it's not really running. I just check the box, hit go, and then I'm looking at it, right? So again, advanced analytics, right there in the web browser. This is the same portal. I just turned on this one widget and we enabled some things. But once we get really specific layers that are relevant to the research we're doing, we're not just going to come up with some snazzy maps. We're going to actually build a living, breathing database that will support everything from telling their story, you know, helping them to raise money and support, finding new life ways, and answering questions around the past that might actually feed the future. And I know that sounds kind of idealistic, but we could use a little bit of that in these days. So, you know, so that's really what I had to say. There's, in the end, what we've got is this sort of organized environment that you can take advantage of. And so this isn't a one-off. You guys could start an organization, and that's sort of where Puente comes in to sort of say, hey, don't waste a lot of time. Like, you got this amazing project. I want to be a part of it. We're going to put in 100 hours, get you guys going, get some people started, and get people fired up. And then hopefully it's people in the village that are the next ones up here talking to you about these deep analytics that they're actually doing. Thank you.